Found out my fiancé was cheating 3 days before our wedding, called it off, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Also includes the full drama of my toxic family dynamics, and how I built my business from nothing. So this happened about 2 years ago, but I'm finally ready to share the full story because holy shit, what a ride. Buckle up because this is long but worth it. I was 23, broke as hell, and living off ramen noodles after graduating with a marketing degree that seemed pretty useless. Had like $200 in my bank account, and was getting rejection emails daily. My student loans were $67,000 and growing with interest. I was living in this shitty studio apartment that smelled like cigarettes from the previous tenant, and my car was making this weird noise that I couldn't afford to fix. My parents were constantly on my case about getting my life together. My mom would call every Sunday and ask if I'd found a job yet, then launch into stories about my cousin Maria, who was already making 6 figures in finance. My dad would just sigh and ask when I was going to move back home. The pressure was insane. I was working part-time at a Starbucks just to pay rent, and let me tell you, nothing humbles you like having your college classmates come through your drive-thru in their new cars while you're wearing a green apron and asking if they want to make it a venti. I was applying to like 10 jobs a day, and getting maybe 1 response per week, usually a rejection. The worst part was watching my friends from college posting about their new jobs, their apartments, their relationships. Meanwhile, I was eating cereal for dinner and re-wearing the same interview outfit because it was the only professional thing I owned. Then I met Mark at this tech conference where I was volunteering just to get free access. I couldn't afford the $300 registration fee, but they needed volunteers for the registration desk, so I signed up. I figured it was better than sitting at home refreshing job boards. This guy was everything I wasn't: successful, confident, had his shit together. He was wearing this expensive suit, and had the kind of watch that costs more than my rent. He actually read something I wrote for my university blog, and was impressed. Like, actually impressed. Nobody had ever taken my writing seriously before. "You have a real talent for this," he said, and I swear I almost cried right there at the registration table. "Have you considered freelance marketing? I know several companies that could use someone with your perspective." We went to dinner and he paid without even blinking at the $180 bill. I was used to splitting everything, or just not going out at all. The restaurant was the kind of place I'd only seen in movies: white tablecloths, multiple forks, a wine list that was longer than my resume. I felt Southwest out of place, but Mark made me feel like I belonged there. He told me about his job at this tech company, how he'd just gotten promoted to senior project lead, how he was making more money than he knew what to do with. I told him about my struggles, and instead of judging me, he seemed genuinely interested in helping. "The job market is tough right now," he said. "But you're clearly talented. Sometimes it's just about knowing the right people." Mark became my knight in shining armor, I guess. He took me to networking events, where I met actual decision-makers, instead of just other desperate job seekers. He bought me a new laptop when mine died, a MacBook Pro that cost more than I'd ever spent on anything. When I protested, he said it was an investment in our future. He helped me get a job through his connections at this small marketing firm. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was steady, and for the first time in months I could afford groceries without checking my bank balance first. I felt like I could finally breathe. My family loved him. My mom kept saying stuff like, "He's stable, he could give you the life you deserve." She'd never approved of any guy I'd dated before. They were all broke college students or struggling artists. But Mark had a 401k and talked about buying property. He was everything my immigrant parents had dreamed of for their daughter. My sister Sophia was even more direct. "Girl, you better lock that down. Do you know how rare it is to find a man who's actually got his life together? Most guys our age are still playing video games in their parents' basement." Even my usually skeptical best friend Lauren was like, "Girl, lock that down." She'd seen me date a string of losers, guys who borrowed money from me, who couldn't hold down jobs, who treated me like an option instead of a priority. Mark was different. Mark had his shit together. The relationship moved fast. Within 3 months, I was spending most nights at his place, a beautiful one-bedroom apartment downtown with a view of the water. He had real furniture, not just stuff from IKEA and garage sales. His fridge was always full of actual food, not just condiments and leftover takeout. He'd take me shopping and insist on buying me clothes for work events. "You need to look the part," he'd say, picking out blazers and dresses that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I felt guilty but also grateful. For the first time in my life, I looked like I belonged in professional settings. He proposed in Paris, which he paid for obviously, and I said yes because fairy tale moment, right? The trip was incredible. We stayed at this boutique hotel near the Louvre, ate at restaurants I'd only seen on Instagram, took a million photos in front of every landmark. When he got down on one knee under the Eiffel Tower, I felt like I was living in a movie. The ring was gorgeous, a 2-carat solitaire that caught the light from every angle. I kept staring at it on the plane ride home, still not quite believing it was real. Mark held my hand and talked about our future, the house we'd buy, the kids we'd have, the life we'd build together. We planned this huge wedding at the Fairmont Olympic, $45,000 just for the reception. When I freaked about the cost, he was like, "Don't worry about money, this is our special day." His parents were contributing too, and they had the kind of money where $45,000 was just a line item in their budget. The wedding planning was intense. Mark's mom Patricia basically took over, which was fine because I had no idea what I was doing. She had opinions about everything: the flowers, white roses only, the menu, no fish, too risky, the music, classical for ceremony, jazz for cocktail hour. I felt like I was just along for the ride, which should have been a red flag, but I was too caught up in the excitement to notice. Every vendor meeting, every tasting, every decision, Mark and his mom would discuss options and I'd just nod along. They knew what they were doing, right? My own parents were stressed about the whole thing. They'd offered to contribute $5,000 they'd been saving, but it was nothing compared to what Mark's family was spending. I could see my mom calculating costs in her head during vendor meetings, probably wondering how people could spend more on flowers than she made in a month. "Are you sure about all this, Mija?" my dad asked me one night. "It's a lot of money for one day." "Mark says not to worry about it," I replied, but I was having the same concerns. The wedding was becoming this massive production that didn't feel like us, or at least, didn't feel like me. About 2 months before the wedding, things started feeling off. Mark was working late more often, seemed distracted during our planning sessions, was on his phone constantly. When I asked what was wrong, he'd say work was stressing him out, or that he was just tired from all the wedding planning. I believed him because I wanted to. We were so close to the finish line, and I'd invested so much emotionally in this relationship. Plus, everyone kept telling me how lucky I was, how perfect we were together, how this was exactly the kind of stable relationship I needed. But looking back, there were signs I completely ignored. He'd get texts at weird hours and would quickly flip his phone over. He'd take calls in the other room, saying it was work stuff. He started going to more work events that I wasn't invited to. The worst part was how he started treating me during this period. He'd make little comments about my appearance, my job, my friends. Nothing major, just little digs that made me feel small. "Maybe you should wear the blue dress instead, it's more flattering. Your friend Lauren seems a little immature, don't you think? Are you sure you want to order that? You've been stress eating lately." I started second-guessing myself constantly. Was I gaining weight? Were my friends actually immature? Was I not sophisticated enough for the life Mark was offering me? I became obsessed with being the perfect fiancé, the kind of woman who deserved a man like Mark. Everything was perfect until 3 weeks before the wedding, when I got a text from a random number with a video attached. The message just said, "You need to see this," with no other context. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It was Mark at a hotel bar with some woman I'd never seen. She was beautiful in that effortless way, long dark hair, designer clothes, the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. They were all cozy, and then she kissed him. And he didn't pull away. The timestamp was from the night he told me he was working late. I watched that video probably 10 times, looking for any explanation that would make it okay. Maybe it was an old video. Maybe it wasn't actually Mark. But no, I recognized his watch, his laugh, the way he tilted his head when he was interested in what someone was saying. I drove to his apartment in a complete daze. When he opened the door and saw my face, he immediately knew something was wrong. Emma? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I held up my phone with the video paused on the kiss. Who is she? The color drained from his face. For a moment he just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish. Then he stepped aside to let me in. The confrontation. I confronted him, and he gave me the classic, "It's not what it looks like" bullshit. Said she was drunk and kissed him, and he didn't have time to stop her. But I watched that video, they were flirting for like 20 minutes before anything happened. Mark, you were laughing with her for 20 minutes. You bought her drinks. You didn't exactly push her away when she kissed you. Emma, please, you have to believe me. It was nothing. It meant nothing. I love you, I want to marry you. This doesn't change anything. But it changed everything. As I stood in his living room, looking at the man I'd planned to spend my life with, I realized I didn't know him at all. How long had this been going on? Were there others? Had our entire relationship been built on lies? How long? I asked. How long what? How long have you been seeing her? He ran his hands through his hair, a tell I'd learned meant he was about to lie. Emma, I'm not seeing her. It was just one night, one mistake. Don't lie to me. Not now. How long? Finally, he broke. A few months. But Emma, it's not serious. She's fun. You and we're building something real. We're getting married. A few months. While we were planning our wedding, tasting cakes, addressing invitations, he was with someone else. Someone who was fun, in a way that I apparently wasn't.
Calling off a wedding 3 weeks before is a nightmare. Vendors want their money, people have flights booked, my mom cried for hours. The caterer alone was $15,000 that we couldn't get back. Mark ended up paying for everything, probably hoping it would win me back. But the vendor calls were nothing compared to the family drama. My mom was devastated, not just about the wedding but about what this meant for my future. "Mija, maybe you can work through this," she said through tears. "Men make mistakes. He's a good man, he can provide for you." My sister was more practical but equally upset. "Do you know how hard it's going to be to find another guy like Mark? You're not getting any younger, Emma." Even some of my friends questioned my decision. "Are you sure you're not overreacting?" Lauren asked. "I mean, it was just a kiss, right? And you guys have invested so much in this relationship." The pressure to forgive him was intense. Everyone kept pointing out how much money had been spent, how perfect we looked together, how stable he was. But every time I thought about that video, about the way he'd lied to my face for months, I knew I couldn't do it. Mark tried everything to win me back. He sent flowers to my office every day for a week. He showed up at my apartment with grand gestures, a playlist of our songs, a photo album of our relationship, promises to go to couples therapy. He even offered to postpone the wedding instead of canceling it. "We can work through this," he kept saying. "Don't throw away everything we'd built together." But that was the problem, he had built it. I'd just been along for the ride. I moved back in with my parents at 24, sleeping in my childhood bedroom feeling like a complete failure. My high school trophies were still on the shelves, my college textbook stacked in the corner. I felt like I'd regressed 5 years in the span of a week. Everyone kept asking if I was sure, if maybe we could work it out. The questions were constant and exhausting. At the grocery store, at church, at family gatherings, everyone had an opinion about my decision. "You're making a mistake," my aunt told me at Sunday dinner. "Good men are hard to find, especially ones with money." "Maybe this is a blessing in disguise," my cousin said. "Now you can focus on your career." "I just don't understand why you couldn't forgive him," my mom said for the 100th time. Marriage is about forgiveness. I started avoiding social events because I was tired of explaining myself. I was tired of people acting like I'd thrown away my one chance at happiness. I was tired of feeling like a failure. The worst part was the loneliness. For 2 years, Mark had been my person. When something good happened, he was the first person I called. When I had a bad day, he was there with solutions and comfort. Suddenly I had no one to share things with, no one who understood my daily struggles. But honestly, finding out he was cheating was just the wake-up call I needed. One night, about 3 months after the breakup, I was lying in bed feeling sorry for myself when I had this moment of clarity. I realized I'd been living his life, not mine. He made all the decisions, paid for everything, and I just went along with it because I was grateful. I wasn't his partner, I was his project. And maybe that's why he'd gotten bored and found someone more fun. So I did something crazy. I started my own marketing consultancy. Used the skills I actually had instead of waiting for someone to hire me. I'd been working at the marketing firm for over a year and had learned a lot about social media strategy, content creation, and client management. I started with small local businesses, charging way less than I should have, but building a portfolio. My first client was the coffee shop where I'd been spending most of my time working on my laptop. The owner mentioned they were struggling with their Instagram, and I offered to help for $200 a month. It was scary as hell. I was back to ramen dinners and checking my bank balance obsessively. But for the first time in years, I was making my own choices. When I landed my first big client, a local restaurant chain that wanted help with their social media across 5 locations, I cried happy tears because I did it myself. The business grew slowly but steadily. I learned about social media marketing, content creation, all the stuff that was just becoming big. I worked 80-hour weeks from my parents' basement, but I was building something that was mine. I made mistakes, lots of them. I undercharged for my services, took on clients who were more trouble than they were worth, said yes to projects I wasn't qualified for. But each mistake taught me something, and gradually I got better at running a business. My parents didn't understand what I was doing at first. "Why don't you just get a real job?" my mom would ask. "This internet stuff isn't stable." But when I started making more money than I had at the marketing firm, they began to take me seriously. After 6 months, I had 12 regular clients and was making enough to move out of my parents' house. I found a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I bought my own furniture, chose my own decorations, made my own decisions about everything from the paint color to the coffee maker. About a year later, I met David at a coffee shop. I was there working on a client presentation, stressed out and probably looking like hell. My laptop was dying and I was frantically trying to save my work when this guy at the next table offered to share his phone charger. "Rough day?" he asked with a sympathetic smile. "You could say that," I replied, gratefully plugging in my laptop. "Thanks for this. You're a lifesaver." We started talking and I found out he was a teacher, definitely not rich, but passionate about his work. He taught high school English and coached the debate team. When he talked about his students, his whole face lit up. "What do you do?" he asked, and when I told him about my business, he asked thoughtful questions. He wanted to know about my clients, my challenges, my goals. He seemed genuinely interested in what I was building, not just impressed by my potential. Our first date was at a food truck because that's what we could both afford. He insisted on paying for his own meal, which was such a relief after years of Mark paying for everything. We sat on a park bench eating tacos and talking about everything: our families, our dreams, our fears. "I like that you're building something," he said. "It takes guts to start your own business." David never tried to fix me or take care of me. He supported my dreams but let me chase them myself. When I had a bad day, he'd bring over pizza and listen. When I had a good day, he'd celebrate with me. We were actual partners. The business continued to grow. I hired my first employee after 18 months, a recent college grad who reminded me of myself a few years earlier. Then I hired a graphic designer, then a content writer. We moved into a real office space, nothing fancy but professional. My big break came when I landed a contract with a regional restaurant chain. They wanted a complete social media overhaul for 15 locations. It was a $50,000 contract, more money than I'd ever seen at once. I hired 5 more people and we knocked it out of the park. The success felt different than anything I'd experienced with Mark. This was mine. I'd built it from nothing, made every decision, learned from every mistake. When clients complimented our work, I felt proud in a way I never had before. We've been together for over a year now and just moved in together. We split everything 50-50 and make decisions together. My business is doing well enough that I hired 2 employees and moved into a real office. I'm not rich, but I'm financially independent and proud of what I built. David and I are talking about getting married, but it feels completely different than it did with Mark. We're equals. We both contribute financially, emotionally, and practically. When we make decisions about our future, we make them together. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd married Mark. I'd probably be living in a nice house, driving a nice car, but I'd still be that broke college grad who needed someone else to take care of her. Instead, I'm someone who takes care of herself. The funny thing is, I heard through mutual friends that Mark got married last year to someone else, the woman from the video, actually. Good for him, I guess. But I'm genuinely grateful he cheated because it forced me to become the person I was meant to be. I also heard that his new wife doesn't work, which doesn't surprise me. Mark likes to be needed, likes to be the provider and decision maker. I hope she's happy with that dynamic, but I know now that it never would have worked for me long term. To anyone in a relationship where you feel more like a charity case than a partner run. You deserve someone who sees you as an equal, not a project to fix. And to anyone who's been betrayed and feels like their world is ending, it's not. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing that could happen. Edit, thanks for all the support. A lot of people are asking about my business. I do social media marketing for small businesses. Started with like 5 clients and now have 30 plus. It's not glamorous but it's mine. Edit 2, stopped me asking if Mark was rich. That's not the point. The point is I was depending on someone else instead of building my own life. Edit 3, for those asking about David, yes, we're still together and very happy. He's nothing like Mark and that's exactly why it works. Edit 4, to the person who said I should have fought for my relationship, no. Cheating isn't a mistake, it's a choice. And I chose myself.